Hello. Today we're going to be learning Likkutei Torah, Daf Lamed Vav. We're going to be learning a Biaor on the Maimer Reisi V'hine Mener Zahav Kula, which was on Daf Lamed Gimel. And this Biaor is going to go through a few of the core concepts discussed in the main Maimer. In the first concept we're discussing, we are at the bottom of Daf Lamed Hey, is the concept of Chochma Techayas Ba'aleha. And this is a pasuk originally in Keheles, which means that wisdom gives life or vitality to its owner. And the Alter Rebbe explains that Chochma is Torah and Ba'aleha is mitzvahs. And so even though the mitzvahs are the primary force, are the Baal, nevertheless, the Torah has the ability to lend vitality, to lend meaning to the mitzvahs. And Alter Rebbe offers a few different options as to how to understand that. And so we're now going to expand upon that Biaor and provide more depth and more context. So we're starting with Maimer Chazal. The Gemara in Brachas asks the question, why is it that we say Shema before Vahaya? And the answer offered by the Gemara is that before you want to accept mitzvahs, before you accept the all mitzvahs, you have to first accept the all malchus shamayim. So it's explained that Kabbalah's all malchus is the idea of accepting the gezeres hamelech, of accepting the fact that there is a king and that I'm following his instructions, and that the reason I do the mitzvahs is not to experience pleasure, and not for the pleasure and delight that the king is going to feel because I've done them, but that I'm purely doing the mitzvahs because I'm a servant, and this is gezeres hamelech. And so and this is the kind of underpinning of Kabbalah's soul before the Kabbalah's mitzvahs. Now we find the pasuk that says Hanistaris laHashem lekein lavai lekenu v'anigalos lanu. So the nistaris are love and fear, and the nigalis is the word nigalos with a vav hey v'hanigalis, and this is a reference to Torah mitzvahs, that the Torahs are hinted to in the vav of the name of Hashem, because the Torah has with it the Shishay Sidra Mishnah, the Vav Sidarim of the Mishnayos, and the Hey is the mitzvahs in that the mitzvahs have to do with Malchus, have to do with the final hamshacha, and so the hamshacha of the Hey, that final hamshacha of the mitzvahs happens through the hamshacha of the happens through the vav, happens through the Torah, which causes that. Now, to understand this, we first have to understand the idea of avodah, and the fact that we serve God. So that in analyzing this idea of Kabbalah's all, we have to first understand the concept at all that we serve the King, and the question is that what does an infinite God need with our mitzvahs? And what precisely is the service that he requires of us, that we even have this relationship with him, that he is our king, and that I serve him? So to explain, the idea of avodah is drawing down a gilui elokos from a concealed state, from higher than hishtashlos, and bringing it into the world. Because the way the world is currently built, the way that Hishtashlos is currently built, is that with its multitude of levels, the entire function of Hishtashlos is to conceal God and to make it possible for there to be independent beings. And the revelation of Elokos that we're working for is the revelation that we're hoping to mimic and eventually to reach, that of Mashiach. And this is our Avodah, because during Tchias HaMesim, which is the ultimate version of our Avodah, the body of a human being is going to come back, and he's going to realize this revelation of God, and what this means in Kabbalistic terms and in the context of our Maimer is that it's going to be a revelation that is higher than Hishtashlos. In other words, the body is going to come back to be able to appreciate a reality that is beyond the physical reality, because in the physical context, in the physical reality, the body cannot appreciate this. And so the hamshacha has to happen milmayla b'seder hishtashlos, because the way that Histalshalos works is analogous to a highly intelligent person who is who knows many different ideas, and in order to communicate with somebody else, he needs to constrict his ideas and to present only the very final kernel of his thought, either in verbally or in action, and this is the only way in which he expresses himself. And in a similar sense, his Histalshalos presents us with only the tiniest kernel of God's Chochma, even though from the perspective of God there is no division, and the action, speech, and thought are to God identical, but to us, we perceive them as being distinct stages, and within each stage there's a diminution of divine energy, and that ultimately produces a reality, and the reality in which we live, in which we can perceive there being chas v'shalom no God and no creator. And it is into this reality that we are placed, and within this reality we are injuncted to bring a revelation of God. And therefore, the only way in which this can possibly occur is if the revelation comes that has to come from outside of this system. Now, the way of understanding this is through the lens of a human tradition, which is that of crowning a king. That we in cultures throughout the world, there's this concept of inauguration, when a crown is placed upon a king's head, and in the act of placing the crown upon the king's head, it becomes recognizable, and it becomes official that he is now a king. And the Alter Rebbe suggests that there has to be a correspondent service, Mamaila, and that this physical reality has to have a parallel and a source, a spiritual source. So to explain this, the Alter Rebbe begins by discussing the fact that there's two ways of understanding the spheres. You can understand them as being from Keser until Malchus, and you can see the spheres as being also Memata Lamaila. You can understand them being Mamaila Lamata and also Memata Lamaila. And this duality, or these two versions, are called Malchus Keser. And this is not just so that we can have the number 10, that we often count Malchus and Keser as being interchangeable, but rather there's a sense at which there's a space at which to understand Malchus as being Keser. And this link is the reason why Keser is linked to mitzvahs, which mitzvahs was what occurs in Malchus. So this is the reason for the link between Keser and Malchus and mitzvahs, because mitzvahs contain within them the will of the Eibusher, within which is the divine pleasure, is tainug. And so the link between Keser and mitzvahs is based on the fact that Keser is representative of b'chitzenius ratzon and b'pnimius tainug. Now, how exactly does that work? So, ratzon when understanding the spheres through the lens of the human body, ratzon is the forehead, and specifically the skull. And it's al derech mashal, the forehead of a person, which is bone, and it's a bone that completely hides that which is inside. And so too, ratzon has the function of completely hiding the tainug that fuels it, and that when it's presented as ratzon, it does not allow tainug to be expressed. And at a spiritual level, this is because there are two forms of Keser. There's the sense in which Keser is the achrona shebematzil, that it is the lowest level of divine expression, and at the in another sense, it's Rishena Lenat Solim. It's the first creation. So either in one sense, Keser is the lowest form of the creator, and in another sense, Keser is the highest form of creation. And what this is representative of is that if you're referring to Keser as the lowest form of the creator, you're referring to Keser as it is Atik, or Pnimius HaKeser. And if you're referring to it as the first of the creations, you're referring to it as Arach. And coming back to the analogy, the Arach component, the Ratzon component of Keser covers over the Tainug. And it is in this sense that Malchus is called the Asiya of Atzilus, because this is this is where the Ma'aseh Mitzvahs happen, and the Ma'aseh Mitzvahs comes back to Keser, because it's only through the Ma'aseh Mitzvahs that the Tainug and the Ratzon Ha'elyon can be revealed. And so this is the idea of Malchus serving this function. Now the mitzvahs that are made possible in Malchus are the final stage, in that the mitzvahs are the final act, whereas the Torah is the Torah is Chochma. The Torah is the original source. And the way to think of this is that the Chochma mitzvah describes how the mitzvah is going to be, how to perform the mitzvah in order to actually bring down Tainug Elyon. And therefore, we find the idea of the Chochma is Beriru, that Chochma has the ability to refine. Because the body of mitzvahs, the mitzvahs themselves, are from Naiga, right? Which means that the mitzvahs all entail engaging with physical things. There's mitzvah of tzitzis, which has to do with wool, which has to do with sheep, which has to do with, right, and sheep eat food, sheep are physical beings, and Torah is what guides us to be able to take a physical thing and through the instructions of Torah turn it into a mitzvah. And this comes back to the pasuk Chachma that the mitzvahs that the Torah guides Ba'alaha and to give it the vitality. The Torah guides the mitzvahs to give them the vitality to be able to actively draw down Tainug Elyon. Much as a person will express himself first through intellect, and then through thought, then through speech, and then through action. And so in a similar sense, the intellect of Torah is what guides us towards the final action, which is the Ma'aseh HaMitzvahs. And this can be understood further through a quote from the Zohar that is not extant in our versions of the Zohar, which seems to paraphrase a few places in the Gemara that say that once a husband and wife are married, at this point he is now obligated to feed her. And Kabbalistically, what this means is that the expression of Malchus is through Zah, because Malchus is the moon, and it receives from the sun being Zah, and all this allows for Malchus to be drawn down, which is the Nesuin. In other words, after they are married, after they are wedded, after Zah and Malchus are bonded, they then have the ability to express, and this bonding is the moment at which the husband is responsible to feed his wife, meaning that the husband, the Torah, the Zah, is responsible to be mamshich Tainug Elyon into Malchus, and to reveal that as being its function, which is what allows afterwards the Eishes Chayla Teres Baila, which is the full realization of Malchus. And this can tie back into the original pasuk that is the basis for this for the original mimer. That the pasuk is it's a few psukim in which Zechariah is looking at a menorah, and the Alter Rebbe in the original mimer gave many different explanations for each detail of his vision, and so we're now going to reference one of them that he describes in seeing the menorah. He says that there is a gula al resha, an oil bowl on top of it, v'shiva nereseha aleha, and there are 7 lamps upon that, shiva v'shiva mutzakas l'neres asher al resha. there are 7 tubes, each to the lamps that were on top of it. And we're going to analyze just those words gula al resha, the oil bowl on top, which he explained as in the Maimer as being the hispaininus, right? Meditating on God. The Shiva Neiros are the children of the hispaininus, is what the hispaininus produces, which is the ability to make that a reality. And so tying back into what we've explained so far, the hispaininus that we can do while we are approaching mitzvahs is what provides these mitzvahs with the meaning, and the meaning can take the form of these 7 branches, which is that we channel it into all 7 of our midas. Now, the Alter Rebbe is going to return to his analysis of this pasuk, where in the next pasuk it reads Ushnayim zeisam aleha, that there were 2 olive trees near it, echad miyamin hagula ve'echad al shmeila, one to the right of the bowl and one to the left. So we're now going to do a reading of these or a translation of these shnei zeisim. So he says that the nature of an olive is that an olive is tremendously bitter, and the bitterness is what it hides the oil, and the way to extract the oil from the olive is that you need to grind the olives up, and that produces the oil. And the idea in the analog is that through iskafia, right? What does that mean? That when we do iskafia, this reveals the higher source that is the creator, and this is why the Torah was not given to malachim, not just because despite not only is it true that the Jew is the purpose of creation, but not only that, but it has to be a Jew down here who is able to do iskafia, which means to go against his nature, and through the Resus Lasata and the Resus Leila to approach God. And this is something, this iskafia is something that no other creation is capable of doing. Whereas for instance, the malachim who have no body are not capable of coming to this independent bittul, and therefore the malachim didn't get the Torah. And this is also why even the Jews didn't get the Torah until they had gone through the experience of Mitzrayim. That in Mitzrayim they worked with chaymer levanim, they worked with the bricks and with the cement, and which was the idea of bringing out this deeper. Right, this deeper reality, this deeper form of reality, and this is the idea of brachamecha harabim, that through being crushed, through this experience of iskafia, we arouse the yud gimel midas rachamim, which are iris that are lamayla miseder shtalshalos, and we bring about a proper realization of the ultimate function, the ultimate purpose of creation, and so the spiritual parallels of these zeisim is that we know that shemen is chochma, which means that oil is representative of pure energy. As we know that the color of the fire is defined by the purity of the oil. Because spiritually it's described that the oil is capable of producing a pure white light, whereas the wick is what brings the black light, and so but the oil is theoretically capable of producing pure energy, and this is the idea of the Chochma. However, in order to get to this pure energy, there needs to be the crushing first. We need to take the olive and crush it to produce this oil, and the more we can crush the olive, the purer the oil, the purer the energy. And this is the function of gevura, of gevura on Chochma, because the gevura are the bitterness of the olive, and the two olives are the gvuras of Chochma and the gvuras of Bina, and that when there's the Chochma and Bina, Abba and Ema, this produces the Em Habanim, which is the idea of drawing the oil, drawing this energy down from Chochma into Zah in order to provide light to the Zayin Neiris, to all 7 faculties. Now we're returning to our analysis of the pasuk, and we're going back to the previous pasuk where we said Shiva v'Shiva mutzakes, that there are these 7 tubes, Linearis Asher al Reisha, to the lamps that were on top of it. So the way that this is interpreted in the Zohar is Shiva is 14. Unlike the Pirush of Rashi and the Radak, who interprets Shiva to be 7 times 7, which would be 49, but the Zohar translates this as 2 times 7. So what are these 2 tubes? What are these two oils? So the first one is the oil that we talked about, but for the next for the next reference to oil, this is a few psukim later, where it says that there are Shnei tzantrei hazohav, two golden vats, hamarikim me'aleham zohav, that empty out the gold from themselves. And the gold that is referred to here is this quality of gold oil, golden oil. And so we're now going to explain this idea of the golden oil, that when that gold is bina. And at a practical level, or at an expressive level, this is delight. This is the passion. And so these two vats are the shemen is the Chochma, which comes with this gevura, and then it channels through the gevuras. It's processed. It goes from being olives to oil, and that oil gets processed into this golden oil. Which the golden oil is simply the delight. And this is the idea of the gevuras of Chochma becoming the chesed of Bina. Now we now have quite a long segrayim, quite a long parentheses, but where the Alter Rebbe is where we're exploring this idea through the lens of another mimer, which makes clear that we need to think of these shnei zeisim, and not as Chochma Bina, but as the shirish of Chochma Bina, which in the Yud Gimel Rachamim would be Neitzer and Akeh, and could also be interpreted as Moshe and Aaron. And this ties back into the idea of the Kabbalah's all Malchus, that precedes the Kabbalah's all mitzvahs, the Kabbalah's all Malchus of the first Parshas of Shema, because we find that from the words V'ahavta to Uvisharecha is 42 words, which is correspondent to the 42 words in Ana B'chayach, which is also correspondent to the 42 stops, 42 travels that they took from when they left Mitzrayim. And it's the idea that it takes 42. There's 42 steps. There's 42 stages to get out of our taivas, to get out of our Bahamas. And so this is these first the first paragraph of Shema. It represents this journey of us leaving that state. This can also explain that in the Ana B'chayach, the Ana B'chayach is comprised of seven psukim, each of which are 6 words, because each of these 7 psukim represent the branches of the menorah. Again, coming back to the original pasuk, the V'gula al Reisha, that the bowl on the head is once again a hispainus. It's a hispainus of the first pasuk of Shema, which is the idea of the hispainus of Yisrael as li reish. And so the function of this pasuk is to bring this highest form of bittul, which is Chochma, to bring the highest form of bittul through this first pasuk of Shema, and to bring it into a practical sense. And so this has been just a very brief overview of many different references that to provide a little bit more context and a little bit more depth of understanding to the exposition that we've done here. But coming back to the main mimer, we're going to offer another interpretation of the Chochma based on the idea that Pnimius Abba is Pnimius Atik, that the innermost quality of Chochma is the innermost quality of Atik, or which the innermost quality of Atik is, of course, Tainug. That Ratzon is the Acharayim, Ratzon is the outer component, whereas Tainug is the inner and the more significant component, the primary component. So find that Tainug is the ultimate source of everything. That we know that the 410 worlds that are described are it's mentioned in a few places, are come through the 31 Lamed Aleph Nesivas Chochma, through 31 paths of wisdom, whereas the first Nesiv, the first path of wisdom, is higher than the 410 worlds. So the idea being that within Chochma there is a part of Chochma that is higher than creation. There's Lamed Aleph Nesivas Chochma can be involved in the 410 worlds, can be involved in creation, but the highest level of Chochma is this level that is actually higher, is actually distinctly higher, and this is the Nesiv Harishan, which is higher than the Esther spheres that are in Chochma. And this is the idea of the Ayin Leiras Elokim Zlosecha, that no eye has seen a God except for you, which is a pasuk of in Yeshaya that is describing the coming of Mashiach. That the Lamed Beis Nesivas Chochma are correspondent to the 32 times that the name Elokim is mentioned in Bereshis, and the Pnimius though of Chochma is higher than that. The Pnimius of Chochma is Pnimius Abba, Pnimius Atik, and this is why Chochma has this ability to provide extra vitality. And all this is now drawn down afterwards through into Chochma through Zah, which is the idea of the Vahaya Im Shemaya, and that the Vahaya Im Shemaya is Kabbalah's all mitzvahs, which is the Ramach Evar and the Shasagidin, that we're drawing down mitzvahs into each of the 613 into the divine body, and just like in a body, each limb draws down its own force. That a hand, when it's writing, is drawing down the force of seichel, and so too this is true, and this is also true of every other one of the Evarim. In a similar sense, the Ramach, the mitzvahs are drawing down our 248 different drawings from the Heich Sadim, and this is at its source is Shem Ab, and the mitzvahs serve to draw that down. Now, this is the reason why in the first parsha of the Shema it says V'chol Ma'adecha, but in the second parsha it does not. Because the first parsha is Shem Membe, Shem Ab, which is the idea of lifting up. Because the first parsha is all about Aliyah, and that's why in Kriyash Malamita we say the Anabachayach, which is again representative of this idea of Membe. It has the 42 words, because we are referencing Membeis whenever we want to be in the state of Aliyah, and an Aliyah needs Ein Sof. Therefore, we have to render ourselves worthy and fit to be able to draw down this Ein Sof, and this is the V'chol Me'adecha, because if we weren't aligning ourselves with the Ein Sof in our approach to mitzvahs, then in truth, what possibility do we have of drawing down our Ein Sof into the world through our mitzvahs? It is only when we are operating on a V'chol Me'adecha level that we are capable of bringing down bringing down elokos, and this then leads us naturally into the Vahaya, into the second parsha, where we don't need that Chochma anymore. And during the second parsha, we're actually bringing down the Heichsadim, we're bringing down the actual revelation of God, we're bringing down the reward, so to speak, which is why we, in the second parsha, we discuss we talk about being actually given a Gilui Elokos, and this Gilui Elokos, right, is described as being the matar, is described as, and this is the Tainug Elyon that is being revealed to us, and ultimately we have the Vasafta de Ganecha, that we have the opportunity to actually collect those sparks. We have the opportunity to actually be aware of Tainug Elyon that is in the universe through our performance of mitzvahs. And this brings us to the end of the biur, and the end of this of the Likkutei for Parshas Behaaloscha. We're now going to begin the Maimer Shlach L'cha Anashim, which is the beginning of this is the first Maimer in Parshas Shlach. So the pasuk reads Shlach L'cha Anashim. You should send men, and the idea of Meraglim, we know the Meraglim were the Nasiya Ha'eda, they were the highest level of leaders, and so we have to understand first. The opening question is why they didn't want to enter the land of Israel. We also have to understand what the land of Israel is. And furthermore, to understand the land of the value of the land of Israel, we have to understand the fact that the pasuk mentions many times that this is a land dripping with milk and honey, and we have to understand what the complement there is. Why does it matter that these two things, and why is that a complement? So we also find an interesting concept that every mitzvah is tied into the land of Israel, or most mitzvahs cannot be done unless we are in the land of Israel, and even karbanos can only be done temporarily outside the land of Israel, but in general they require the land. So to understand this, we first have to understand the idea that the pasuk that says that a man cannot live on bread alone, and we have to understand what it is why it is that we eat food, right? Why is it that we as the highest form of creation have this need to eat from the lower forms, and to receive vitality through them, when in theory we should be able to receive vitality from our level? Why is it that we have to particularly reach down and receive vitality from a lower level? And so the way the pasuk continues and says ma'itzapi that it comes from the mouth of God, that the daim tzemeach and chai are come from tayu. They come from the rapach tzutzis, the 288 sparks that fell during tayu, that fell with B'shvir Zakalim, and Adam is tikkun. And so even though on earth the human seems like the highest form, in reality the source of those physical things is actually higher, is actually from a deeper place. And this is and so when the neshama descends down into the body, it has to do iskafia. It has to, right, and it's only through iskafia that it's able to, that the neshama has this obligation to engage in the world, and not only an obligation, but that engaging in the world is the only way for the neshama to realize its own purpose. And this is much like a seed that enters the ground, and when it enters the ground, it begins to rot. And it's only when the seed rots that it's able to draw out the vegetative abilities of the life-giving abilities of the earth. And so it's, in a similar sense, the only way that we can that through iskafia, through this rotting, through this challenging ourselves, we are able to draw out the highest form of creation. But coming back to the original point again, we rely upon the lowest forms of creation for us to find our own purpose, and this is similar to the idea that it says in the Pesach Elio, that Elio says, Antu dapikas eser tikunin v'karin lahain eser sfiran lanhaga b'hain alman sasim delayas galan, that you have these 10 spheres with which you guide the worlds, and the word alman is Melashon Helam, and the Zayhar this is called Hechalas. We have the Hechal of Gvura, the Hechal of Chesed. These are these rooms, and within these rooms, the Zohar describes there being the neshamas, which are ne'enem eziv hashchina, and the malachim that sit in those rooms, ba'ava v'yira v'pachad, and specifically when we talk about different malachim, there being the camp of Gavriel and the camp of Michal, they are camped out, so to speak, in one of these rooms, and there's this nahar dinur, there's this river of fire that separates each level from another, and each of them is in their room singing the praises of God, each according to their own understanding. And so those malachim, those beings which live in a world of chesed, live in the room of chesed, operate particularly only on a chesed level, and this is true of each spiritual being. Now, these hechalim are like spheres that contain within them every manifestation of that sphere. So the Heichal of Chesed has within it every manifestation of Chesed, Chesed, Shebechesed, Chesed, Shebegvura, all the different, every different manifestation. And this is the idea of Lanhaga B'Hain Alman, that it guides the world. That God uses these Heichalas to guide the world and to express Himself in each one of His different qualities in a way that in a way that channels divine energy in particular ways, each according to its need. And all of them have the function of hiding our insight and making sure that it not be revealed except according to the abilities of the created beings that need to experience it. But it is obvious that the experience that they're having is she'ein areich to the Aryan Seif, and that there needs to be this heichal which has the function of hiding and concealing it, and that through this hiding and through this concealing and through a myriad of descents, the Hishtashlos, you eventually get a Shamim ba'aretz, and in the Shamim and Aretz there is no apparent evidence of a creator, and the neshama descends down into this lowest world in order to do iskafia through surmei ra, and then through when the neshama does surmei ra, it is istalik yikar de kuchabrichu b'kulhu amen, it reveals God in all the worlds. That through the neshamas, the neshama makes it impossible for the heichalas to hide God anymore. The neshama reveals God, and through the neshamas revealing God, you then have asay tov, which is the positive commandments, and that actually brings a revelation of God down here. But it has to begin with the surmei ra. It has to begin with the leisusura and through that there's this and then after that we have the asay tov. We have the ability to draw down a revelation of God down here through the Torah, the Chochma nafkas, and the mitzvahs, which is the ramach, evar, and the malka, which and that we actually have the ability to bring down that revelation. And this is the meaning of Eretz Yisrael being called this land of milk and honey. That milk and honey is a reference to Chesed and Gvura, and it's the idea of drawing down alokot through mitzvahs ma'asios into the world. And Eretz Yisrael is a reference to Eretz Yisrael Shalomila, and the main mitzvahs being done in Eretz Yisrael. And the Meraglim had a problem with this, because although they were in fact great men, and they didn't want to lower themselves to draw down mitzvahs, to draw down Aryan Seif through mitzvahs ma'asios, and therefore they said that Eretz Yisrael is a land which consumes its inhabitants, because they thought that if there were to be a Gilui Aryan Seif, the way that mitzvahs could do and for that to happen in an actual physical world, it would consume the inhabitants. It would cause the independent beings to lose their entire sense of independence. And this is and so what they therefore wanted to stay in the midbar. That the midbar is the Melashon Dibur, which is the idea of drawing down our insight into Malchus. But specifically at this, the Eretz Yisrael Shalomila is called Eretz because it's the lowest level of Elokut, as we say V'Haaretz Adaim Ragli, and we say B'Chochma Yisad Aretz that the Dibur has its source, its original source from Chochma, and it is analogous to a child, that so long as the child lacks the intelligence, even though the child is able to articulate simple sounds, the child is not able to string those sounds together into a coherent thought, and to be able to form the words in a way that expresses his will. And so what the Meraglim wanted was to draw down that Chochma into Dibur, but to keep it at that state. They wanted to keep it at this higher level, and to not draw it down fully. Masha'in Kain, Yeshua and Kalev, that Yeshua and Kalev said Haaretz the Teva Aretz Ma'id Ma'id, that through this what they were saying was that they wanted Eretz Yisrael specifically. They wanted the lower Eretz Yisrael. They wanted mitzvahs ma'asiyos. They wanted to draw down God into the world, and they wanted to draw him down both into Ammon Sesimin and to Ammon Desgalion, which is why they said Ma'id Ma'id, because they realized that the main purpose of creation was dir b'dachlenim, and that their absolute purpose was to draw down from this highest level, to draw down all the way to the lowest level. And this can be understood through two analogies. One of them is that the wise man, the truly wise man, does not express his thoughts through articulated speech, but that he saves his deepest thoughts for hints and riddles. And the other one is that of a stone, that the brilliance of the stone will not allow the letters to be revealed, and that the only way for the letters within the stone to be revealed is through the application of wax. So we see that in both cases there's this idea of the Helem being the greatest form of Gilui, and this was what Kalev and Yeshua understood. And we find this with each one of the mitzvahs that we say, that when it comes to tzitzis, we look at the 32 physical strings, and through that we remember the Eibishter, because the talis is the armakif, right? Talis surrounds us, but the tzitzis are these 32 nesifas chachma, the things that make it allow us to draw it to an actually in an actually relatable sense. They draw it into us, and this would not be possible without there being the Maisa. And this was what the Meraglim were trying to prevent. They were trying to prevent the Gilui Elokos from happening at this lowest level. And even Moshe Rabbeinu, right? The Moshe Rabbeinu was the Nasi of Dardeya. He was the Nasi of this generation of knowledge, but because he was at this level of Deya, he was prevented from coming into Eretz Yisrael. And despite the fact that he asked the 515 tefillas, which is correspondent to Veschanan, in which he begged to come to Eretz Yisrael, this job was saved for Yeshua, the job of bringing the Eibusher down into the actual physical world.